Okay, it is a little bit after 8:30, about 8:32, and welcome to week number 5 of Introduction to Criminal Law. I'm Professor Richard Wright. Today is March 5th, and this is the 5th week, and you have one more week to go. And so you need to make sure that you've gotten all your assignments in and completed on time, and that make sure you follow the rubrics. I've already talked to you about that, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time today. I'm just going to talk about the content of the material and give you some instructions and guidance about the topic that is involved this week. So let me go and share my screen. Okay, you're familiar with this page, the information here. So I'm going to scroll all the way down to remind you that the lecture, the last one, will take place next Tuesday at 8:30 p.m. Central Standard Time. Below that are your recordings from week 1 through 4. After this, there will be a week 5 lecture that will be there. So let's get into our announcement for the week. For week 5, crimes against moral values, we'll be discussing. I provided you previously with the PowerPoints for Chapter 7 of A Brief Introduction to Criminal Law. And then we're going to discuss drug laws, drunk and drug driving, distracted driving, hate crimes, and then you deal with key terms for practice, drunk driving, enforced blood draws, identify the drug schedule, and then take the practice quiz. I always encourage you to take the practice quiz because it helps you to prepare for your next exam, which will be coming up next week, which covers weeks 4, 5, and 6. So be sure to participate tonight by 11:59 p.m. Central Standard Time in the discussion post, drunk driving. And then your initial post is due tonight. Your reply post is due Saturday. And then finally, complete the written assignment. Has a hate crime been committed? And you're going to complete that written assignment doing research, providing information and sources from the tools that we've given you. And remember, your textbook cannot be the sole source of this paper. Do not rely heavily on the textbook. We want you to do more research. So now let's take a look at the course calendar. And you can see right here, this is where we are. And it goes over the initial post due tonight on drunk driving. And then your reply post due the 9th, which is Saturday. And then Sunday the 10th, your written assignment is due at 11:59 p.m. Central Standard Time, as well as the keyword that you have. So basically for this week, you have your discussion post, your written assignment, and given the keyword, okay? You'll notice that next week, there's a shorter week. The course actually ends on the 15th, not the 16th, not the 17th. So 11:59 p.m. Central Standard Time, all papers that are not in will not be graded. And you should also be aware that I'm not accepting papers from weeks 1, 2, or 3 unless I have previously given you permission. I mean, previously, you know who you are. If not, don't try to submit weeks 1, 2, or 3. I will not grade them, and you will still get some number of points taken off. All right? And the people that have been given a chance to do it previously, not now, previously shared with me circumstances that I deem to be extenuating and to give you a chance to be able to complete those assignments. So it's very important that you pay close attention to that. All right? So let's close this. And now let's go straight to our week 5 module. And go over the assignments quickly. The discussion post. Okay. Then your written assignment. And is three parts to this one. You're going to come from different perspectives, from the police officer's perspective, from the defense attorney's perspective, and then from the detective's perspective. And you're going to answer the questions. Each one should be a minimum of 1 page in order to adequately deal with the scenario. Each one should be at least 1 page with citations in the body. Now, references at the end should cover all 3. Again, here's a resource to help you guides that tells you about your weekly assignment, gives you a library to provide sources for you, and then if you still have struggle with APA, there's the APA toolkit included in there. Tutoring and writing lab if you still need that as well. And then supply your live lecture keyword. You see it says here that it's due by 11:59 p.m. Central Standard Time. Okay, and that's it for assignments. I will just show you quickly what the rubric looks like. Remember, I said pay close attention. First, it tells you the due date, and then you click on the rubric, and the rubric explains the crimes, tells you what you need to do to meet 1 page. So you get 10% for each one. 10 points. So that's really 75% of your grade. And then your other 2 parts are divided equally between writing in paragraphs, make sure they're double spaced, and then have a cover sheet, title cover sheet, APA formatted. We already talked about that, and that's how you get your total of 40 points. Okay. So now let's go to let's leave the assignment section and let's go to the lesson content. So we're going to talk about what we're going to discuss. Again, we're going to talk a little bit about drug laws, drunk and drug driving, distracted driving, hate crimes, key terms, and then for practice you can deal with the key terms and all of these, and then we'll go from there. So let's talk about drug crimes. Some of you are in that class and in this class at the same time. But it is a course that we specifically deal with the fact that drug laws are a decision based on morality. You should also be aware of the fact that drug laws are there because it adversely affects the health of our country. There is a very clear issue of opioid addiction that is taking place in this country, where people are using drugs, starting with innocent painkillers and finding themselves graduating to opioids, heroin, and synthetic drugs. And so many crimes that are committed, and I've said this many times, are related to drugs. People commit usually property crimes to get things that they can sell or pawn to buy drugs to satisfy their drug habit. And so there is a very serious thing. You should understand that from the criminal law perspective, when drugs are ingested, it says it's a choice. However, you should, it's kind of, that's kind of not true. It's not a choice. It may start out as a choice, but after a while, that person is addicted and their free will is taken away. It says there are no victims in a traditional sense when it comes to drug use, possession, or sale. However, it says there are instances when innocent people are harmed by drug-related crime. I just got through talking about it, where innocent bystanders are caught in drug-related wars, Many of the shootings that take place in the urban areas involve gangs, and the reason for the gang killings generally have some relationship to the distribution of crack cocaine and some heroin, but primarily crack cocaine. And they're fighting for turf and territory, and what they're doing is trying to knock off each other, but these people don't shoot straight, so they end up hitting innocent people, children, elderly people, people who have nothing to do with that. And so the crimes take place. I've already addressed the fact that robbery is often motivated by an individual who seeks to purchase drugs. I had a young man I represented years ago, and I always talk about this in my drugs and crimes course, and I'll talk about it here. This young man had all kinds of drug cases that he had, and then he had some burglaries and robberies, primarily burglaries. Well, the young man was back in jail, and I was hired to represent him. I discovered from my research that the young man had a very, very, very serious problem. Now, generally, I would encourage families to get the person out on bail so that they could, go home. That's what I would generally do. However, in this situation, I indicated very seriously that the individual probably would be better off if they didn't bail him out. And that if they bailed him out, that he was probably going to have a problem because of the drugs. And so anyway, so this individual did get bailed out, contrary to my recommendation. It was a couple of days after that that the young man got out of the house, and while in the process of trying to commit a burglary, he crossed over a highway, a freeway, to the other side of town, and then a police pursuit took place where he was chased. He tried to backtrack, jump over the fence to cross back over the highway because that was the quickest way for him to get back to his place. But he never made it because there were several vehicles that hit him, and he was instantly killed on the expressway. So it resulted in his death. But the reason why is not because he liked burglaries, but because the fact that he needed to commit a burglary to get the money to be able to buy the drugs. And so we're going to talk about the enforcement, use, and possession and sale of drugs and narcotics. Now, as many of you know who are taking my other course, there are various schedules. And the the lower the schedule number, which is Schedule 1, the more potent, the more serious drugs are listed there. However, there are others that are in Schedule 2 and now Schedule 3 that are becoming very, very, very potent in terms of dealing with opioids. So Schedule 1 involves like heroin, LSD, ecstasy, and marijuana. And as you already know, marijuana is probably going to be falling off of the schedule because of the recreational laws that are in many jurisdictions. However, it may stay there until the feds decide to make it recreational. You should be aware that even in the states where it's legal, federal law still prohibits the use of marijuana. So that hasn't changed. And if the drug fits the criteria of the first three, high potential for abuse, not currently accepted for medical use, but as you know, marijuana is, lack of demonstrated safety under medical supervision, all of these things are involved. So of the 4 that are listed on here, marijuana probably is one that would probably be exempted in the future. Schedule 2, also a high potential acceptable medical use, but it may lead to psychological or dependence. And that deals with oxycodone, fentanyl, opium, and cocaine. Regular painkillers can lead to that, as in Schedule 3. It says a lower potential for abuse, but leads to low psychological and physical dependence. However, in conjunction with Schedule 2, Schedule 3, things like Tylenol with codeine, Suboxone, ketamine, anabolic steroids, and other drugs are involved in helping to create the serious opioid crisis that we have in our country. And then we got Schedules 4 and 5. 5 is the lowest. Okay, and so this is how they're classified on the federal level, and state laws are generally written to follow along these lines. And you could click on this and check out the Uniform Criminal Control Laws there. So we deal with possession of controlled substances as from the legal angle. There are two ways that you can do it: what we call actual possession, which is kind of pretty clear when you have physical control. For example, you have a bag of cocaine in your pocket or on your possession. Constructive possession, when a person has the right or ability to control the item, but it's not in their person. For example, when it's in a car of the person who's operating the vehicle. Be aware that whenever there are generally stops, and this goes with alcohol as well as drugs, the driver is in control of the vehicle, and it is presumed that it's their vehicle, or they've been authorized by someone to be able to use that vehicle, whether it's rented or whether it's a family member or a friend or whomever, and thus they take responsibility for whatever is found in the car on a primary level. So just because it's not found on you, it could be found in the car, which is why I tell people very carefully, you have to know who is with you, who is hanging with you, because you can be charged with constructive possession because of the fact that you are in their vicinity. Same thing can happen in your home. Someone can come and they can be arrested for that, okay? So there are state statutes that deal with this, such as Ohio. Here's an example. There are 3 elements: knowingly possess a controlled substance, that is one that falls under one of these schedules, or a controlled substance analog, a mixture or a combination of, which in this case, if you go back, you'll see that these things fall under probably Schedule 5, or either they could fall under Schedule 4. Anyway, the bottom line is that these are drugs that are made up. These are what we call synthetic drugs, such as K2 or spice, which is like marijuana, and therefore it's a controlled substance as well. So that's what they're talking about. So the key thing is that a person must knowingly be involved. Now, the more drugs you have in your possession at the time of an arrest or stop, the more serious the offense is. And the reason is the key is what they're trying to do is give people who have what we call a personal use amount, such as a nickel bag, a dime bag, something that demonstrates they're not selling it, but they're using it themselves, they get lighter sentences. But for the delivery, possession to be delivered, it's based upon an increased amount, and you'll see something like 1,000 grams or more, something along with that, and the sentence gets higher for distribution and sale. Why is that? Because we're dealing with organizations like cartels, drug dealers, and so forth. Now, they're the suppliers, and if the suppliers are cut off, which is what the war on drugs is supposed to be all about, which is not very successful, then you have organizations like these major cartels, like El Chapo, Joaquin El Chapo Guzman, is now incarcerated awaiting sentencing, for 10 counts, I believe it is, of distribution of drugs and is facing a life sentence. However, there are individuals who are family members or other individuals who are continuing. So the drugs come from China, the drugs come from Mexico, Latin America, and other places as well. Those are the predominant places. But the fact of the matter is that individuals can go to jail for a long time for what we call possession with intent to deliver, and that is based upon the quantity. So in our scenario that we had today, that we were dealing with, where a person has a high amount and they're a nurse or a professional in their possession, then that probably is not personal use. That is probably possession with intent to deliver. And so the law is not as lenient on individuals in those situations because theirs is all about greed and money. Possession without intent to deliver or a smaller quantity is because you're an addict or a junkie, but and it's for your personal use and you're not selling it. All right. So it says, for example, sale of a Schedule I drug such as heroin is a felony of the 2nd degree, punishable up to 15 years. And delivery or sale of a Schedule II, such as cocaine, is a felony, and a 3rd degree punishes up to 5 years in prison. So the key thing is that it escalates based upon the higher quantity. And that's pretty much what you run into when you read these. Or if you are distributing the drugs also on school property or someplace like that, a park, a government-owned entity, it's a no-no. Your sentence is going to be higher. Okay, so that's pretty much it for the drugs. Again, if you want to know more details on that, take the J150 course, and you will hear all about that. So now let's talk about drunk and drug driving. Driving under the influence, DUI. A lot of people think of DUI as driving under the influence of alcohol. However, and these are, remember this, we're talking about moral crimes. Some people say, well, it only hurts the individual. No, it hurts us as well, innocent people, and hurts families and society overall. Anyway, so drunk driving. You can be drunk in your private place, but if you're operating a vehicle, then you find yourself turning that vehicle into a potential weapon that could end up killing somebody. And so it is against moral values, but it is also the level where it could have negative impacts on innocent people. People are killed all the time. There was a young lady here in Illinois in our town near here of I believe it was Downers Grove. Yes, the student was on her way to school. She was actually crossing in the crosswalk. You know, the lines that everybody knows that if you see a pedestrian, you have to stop. Well, this person was walking across, and the school wasn't very far. It was on the other side of that little sidewalk, that little street. It wasn't a big street. Unfortunately, she never made it across because a drunk driver hit her, and she ended up dying. So it cost the loss of a person's life. So it is a very serious problem in the United States. Did you know that drunk driving kills a high percentage? Look at these statistics. 28 people die every day in motor vehicle crashes involving alcohol-impaired drivers. One person dies every 53 minutes in an alcohol-related crash. Think about that. Is that one person going to be you or someone, a loved one? Alcohol-impaired driving counts for 31% of all driving fatalities and they talk about a high number, almost 10,000 in 2014, and that the financial impact is in the billions. So it is a very, very, very serious issue, okay? And then be aware that when I was a lawyer practicing, when I first started, in terms of drinking alcohol, that if you were stopped by the police, you could be required to take a breathalyzer, and if you blew a 0.10 blood alcohol content, you were considered as illegal per se, which means you were driving under influence. However, because of the fact that so many deaths were occurring in the 90s, that happened, they lowered the blood alcohol content to 0.08, which means that you could have fewer drinks and violate the law the way it was before. And what they did was they did studies to determine that in reality, a person who had drinks that equal to 0.08 were either going to be slow in responding or either not able to operate their vehicle safely. And so when it says illegal per se, what it says is just the mere fact of you blowing that on the test is what we call driving under influence, even if you think that you can control the vehicle. And so it says present-day statistics demonstrate the positive impact of this, which reduced the number. However, though, there's still too many. I already told you about the case of the person who killed the young lady the other day, but there are many, many, many times. You know, when you're driving down the road, you ever think about, is that person coming at you from the other direction under the influence? And if they do, they can cross over and you might not have enough time to react. You might be boxed in, or you don't have enough time to react and they hit your head on, and it could end up in death or serious injury. And so DUIs have all 50 states, including Louisiana, which usually is different, 3 elements. If you're operating a vehicle on a highway, road, parking lot, or driveway accessible to the public while under alcohol, you can be charged. Now, one of the elements in terms of that is in physical control of the vehicle. So if you are in the front seat of a vehicle or in the driver's position, listen to me, in the front seat of the vehicle or in the driver's position and having possession of the vehicle, then you have physical control. So what does that mean? That means if you're driving and then you're in the front seat of the vehicle and then you find yourself under the influence of alcohol, you have physical control of a vehicle under some state laws, under Ohio. This says, while drunk drivers crash and injure others, the act is criminal act is causing, is caused by the intoxicated use by the person who's driving. And person is, it says, when drunk drivers killed, they're not charged with intentional homicide. Generally, it's manslaughter or involuntary manslaughter, because the death wasn't intended. It wasn't an attempt to kill somebody. But the point of the matter is that that individual falls under these 3 elements. Operate a motor vehicle, once again, while under the influence of a drug or blood alcohol content of at least 0.80, or if the driver is considered impaired and caused the death of another person. Then in that case, that's a homicide. So, and there are many things. They talk about the field sobriety test that you perform. Now, you can see people driving, and you've seen this all the time when you're driving. You see people weaving, driving through a traffic symbol, striking a curb. Sometimes I strike a curb, but I don't drink, but that's because I may turn short. But these are observations that you can generally see. that fit that. Let's see, going back. Physical appearance, odor of alcohol, red or bloodshot eyes, slurred speech. Slurred speech can also be a person having a stroke as well, so you should be aware of that as well. But most of the time it's not that. And then finally, these SFSTs dealing with standard field sobriety tests, standard field sobriety test. That's what SFSTs. So they can look into your eyes. They'll have you walk and turn, stand on one leg, do all kinds of things to determine that you are actually under the influence. And so they talk about these and the various things. Now, every state that I know of has what we call an implied consent law. What that means is if you are driving and you refuse to take the test, then your penalty is increased. Because what you do is you deny the opportunity of the law enforcement and or the prosecution to have evidence to determine that you were driving under the influence. So basically what you're doing is almost like admitting guilt. And so if you refuse that, and you can end up still finding yourself in a bad position. It was thought at one time, says, oh, if I don't take it, they don't have the evidence. And so the case of Missouri versus McNeely, you get a chance to look at it, you'll see more details about that. Okay? This McNeely case, though, stands for the proposition of drawing blood. Prior to the case, the officers could force a blood draw because scientific evidence is used. The McNeely case said, no, we can't do that, because they said that you have to get a warrant to force a blood draw in a drunk driving case, unless there's some exigent circumstances that are established. So that's a good thing, because then we're talking about invasion of privacy of an individual there. And then we talk about drug driving is similar to it. If a person, you know, most of the time a person, when they talk about drug driving, it's usually someone on cocaine or one of those scheduled drugs I talked about, but it can also be a person who has double taken their medication. If you read your medication, a lot of it will tell you that there's possibilities that you could have trouble driving. And so if you are proven to have taken those, you could drive drug driving, which is also DUI. And so this I'm not going to take time to look at. You can go over that on your own. Next, we're going to talk about distracted driving. So it means what it says. It means you're not, when you're driving a car, it is very important for you to focus on what you're doing. You're not supposed to be texting. You're not supposed to be talking on the phone. Now, most jurisdictions now allow you to talk on the phone, but it has to be hands-free and those kinds of things. I've even argued that even with the hands-free devices, you can still be distracted. However, you can also be distracted by your loud music but basically talking on your phone, eating and drinking while driving. Now, I'm not talking about alcohol, eating McDonald's or eating a sandwich or something. The bottom line is that that's what we call distracted driving. And many young people participate in distracted driving, especially dealing with texting on their phone. Many accidents happen. And so this little blurb here says Illinois has a law which is increased if a person is involved in a crash that results in great bodily harm, permanent disability, disfigurement, or death, another based on distracted driving. The key thing is we want you to focus on driving the vehicle. As many scientists said, texting can wait. even sometimes answering the call, even a second hitting the button without touching the phone can be the thing that can create a problem. And then sometimes you can get so enamored in your discussion that you're having that you're not paying attention to what's going on around you, and you could hit somebody, or either you could be injured. So these are all areas that are covered in this module regarding control of your vehicle. So now let's talk about the last topic, which is hate crimes. Now, it has been statistically given that hate crimes are on the rise. And there are many theories about why hate crimes are on the rise. Some have argued that hate crimes are on the rise because of the position of the way that from the top on down that hate crimes are viewed. And a hate crime is very simply a crime which results in an action that would be a crime, but is elevated to a more serious offense if it's based on the race of that individual, it was because of their sexual preference or disability or something along those lines. The bottom line is that it may look like a crime that's serious, simple, but hate crimes are really, 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 really bad. There were many hate crimes in the 50s and in the 60s, but now they are back. And so now many jurisdictions elevate crimes and have in their code based upon some federal legislation that came into existence going back to as far as 1968, when Lyndon Johnson, 4 years after the Civil Rights Act of '64, when the United States Code 18 U.S.C. or United States Code 249 deals with hate crimes. Whenever you see 18 U.S.C. or U.S. 18 U.S., it is the statute which codifies all criminal laws on the federal level. So it said here it made it a crime to use or threaten to use force against a person because of their race, color, religion, or national origin. And since that time, federal legislation has evolved to include additional classes such as sexual orientation because of the LGBT issue, the gender identity, or either a disability because of ADA. People are picked on because of their disability. So, and so many jurisdictions, it says at this time 45 out of 50 states have hate crime laws that involve such things as battery, robbery, vandalism, or arson. And so the point of the matter is that the key thing is that you did it to someone because you didn't like them because of their race, sex, national origin, or religion, or something along those lines. That's the key thing. And I'm not going to go over all of these, okay? If you want to get into something that happened in Wisconsin, you can read the Mitchell case, and then it talked about what happened with the Mitchell case. And the Mitchell case, after Mitchell laws increased the penalties, and such as Florida did, and then from misdemeanor to felonies, and based upon what type of offense. And so there is some more information here regarding hate crimes. Okay? So now I'm going to tell you that, again, to prepare going in this module, you want to look at key terms. Again, utilizing this, it helps you prepare for your exam. And you use the flashcards. And then you have to do this if it's not there. Okay. I don't want to do that. Cancel. Okay, I want to go back to. Let me go back to this. Take it back. I don't know what happened there. Okay, allow it. And it should open it. Okay, here we go. And so this tells you, about the 3 standardized tests and so forth for that. And then if you want to know the answer, flip the card over, SFST. Then you go to the next one. And then you read these questions, and then to get the answer, you flipped it over. Then next. Occurs when a person has physical control over a drug, typically in possession, actual possession. So the bottom line is that you can get help in terms of being able to complete and prepare for the exams. Okay, I don't know why it's not taking me back. There we go. Okay, so that shows you how that works. All right, so now you go down and go further, all the way down past hate crimes. Then you get to, for practice, for drunk driving and drug force laws. You can go over these, and it will help you to prepare for that as well. Okay. And the next thing, identify the drug schedule. And what it'll do is it will give you practice again as to determine what drug is in what schedule. You start the activity, and then you match each category. Drugs that have no accepted medical use in the United States. Would that be Schedule 1? Yeah. Okay. Drugs that have a lower potential for abuse, but may need moderate dependence. Yeah, you might be dealing with 3. Okay. Drugs that have acceptable medical use, but with some restrictions, that's probably Schedule 2. And then you got 2 more. Drugs that have the least potential. And then, of course, Schedule 5. So, okay, so then you submit them. Let's see if I'm right. Your answer was almost right, so partially correct. So you could try again, and you go back, and you can keep doing that until you do it. So it's a good little tool to have to help you. Okay, try again. Let's see what happened to I lost my page. There we go. And then finally, let's go back down to the last one. This is the one I tell you. I say it every week. And some students say, oh, okay, I'll just wait. You can score better. According to the federal law, marijuana is a Schedule what drug? You remember? Remember the lecture? It is 1. So let's submit. I know I'm right. Yes. So then you continue. You are a police officer and you stop the motor vehicle for speeding. While standing along the open driver's side window, you smell burnt marijuana coming from the vehicle. A search reveals marijuana in the center console. The driver claims it's not his. You may still take and enforce action because the driver is in constructive possession. Remember I told you about that. While searching a man who is under arrest for a warrant, you locate a substance that is discovered to be homemade with chemical properties, some ecstasy. The substance considered a what drug? Is it a legal drug? I don't think so. Is it a controlled substance analog? Yep, it is. That is similar to the structure of a tube. So it's controlled. So that's what I was talking about earlier. And then the last one I'm going to do. Incident to a lawful arrest. You search Jane and find cocaine in her front left pants pocket. Jane claims it's not hers, while stating, "They aren't my pants." Although she was wearing them, you still arrest Jane because it's an example of actual possession. Doesn't matter, just like the car, same thing. So I don't care whose pants they are. You're wearing them, so that's it. So that's it. Okay. So you need to study and practice those. Okay. So I'm going to leave this, and I'm going to give you a key word. And the key word is moral crime or moral crimes. Okay? That's what the key word is. All right? So I'm going to say good night and have a good evening.